morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, and we are delighted to be here. This is Rise and Shine, and we're beaming live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. My name is Uyai Anek, and good morning, and thanks for joining us.
And I'm Francis Oyemather. Glad to have you joined us. It's another beautiful Wednesday, of course. The fourth day in the month of October, a day to be grateful, thankful. I know it's raining in some locations across Nigeria. So if you happen to be in that location or in the area where it's raining, please ensure that you're properly dressed so you don't catch a flu or you don't get cold within the course of the day. But outside of that, we'll always be here to talk Nigeria, and we'll always encourage you to be part of our online growing community. And all of that you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. Of course, the phone lines are also available, so if you feel like reaching out to share in the conversations, you can always leave us a WhatsApp message or call the lines directly. And of course, we'll be delighted to speak with you. A lot of issues still within yesterday, the course of yesterday and today. It seems like Nigerians are still, very much disappointed with the moves made by Labour.
By the labor unions, that's a whole lot of conversation. But then, just to piggyback a little bit with regards to the rains, there have been some states that have been highlighted to expect rain for 48 hours stretch. I think the FCT was among, and some other states like that. And then I was wondering, rainfall for 48 hours, what will be the resultant effect after that? Are we really ready for all of the warnings that the meteorological agency had given at the beginning of the year, all of the states that were highlighted to be flood prone this year? For 48 hours, please, if your state was highlighted, please do make sure that you are keeping up. Just like Francis said, do what is necessary not to be caught in all that amount of rain. I think take enough fruits and all of that just to keep abreast. But even before we go to the issues of labor, I think let's run a little bit to the United States of America, where something has happened for the first time in history. I mean, when we begin to have a lot of record-breaking things within the field of politics, then that is brand new. More like, most countries of the world are still evolving. Things that have never been heard in the history of their politics are beginning to happen. Remember that Republican Kevin McCarthy had been filed against to be ousted from office, and then just yesterday the vote was brought forward, and he has been forced out as Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives after a vote by lawmakers. Of course, these lawmakers debated the leadership challenge and voted 216 to 210 to oust him out of office. So McCarthy is the first speaker in the United States history ever to be removed in this way after motion to vacate Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Of course, Matt Gaetz himself was the one who filed a formal motion on Monday to eject him out of office. And finally, 216 against 210, McCarthy is out of office.
Well, when Matt Gaetz, issued the warning and, of course, made it clear that he was coming after McCarthy, of course, McCarthy responded, bring it on. And in the literal process of political engagement or, politics, one would have expected that McCarthy, being the speaker, must have had his hounds grounded, and of course his authority and influence deeply grounded and deeply rooted within the members of the parliament. Unfortunately, history has been made, but one thing that this has taught the whole world, and probably developing democracies like Nigeria, is the fact that we have a whole lot of learning to do. I recall in the history of Nigeria, we've never had a president being impeached. We've never had, a president being cautioned. The very first time we saw that happening was when the lives of senators and their family members in the FCT were threatened after they breaking into the Kuje Correctional Facility. Of course, the spate of insecurity in the FCT warranted that move for impeachment. But of course, we didn't see that happening. And Nigerians, were thrown on different sides. Some group of Nigerians believe that, yes, for the first time, we are seeing the National Assembly members moving a muscle to show that, they are to act as checks and balance to the executive. But then, of course, the other divide was, if it did not have anything to do with them, their safety, that of their family, friends, and loved ones, and where all of them are resident, will we see this level of commitment, this level of engagement, reactions coming from the National Assembly members? So a whole lot of questions there. But then this goes to show that we can actually have a legislature within the developing democracies and developed democracies still having new twists and new turns, still being able to, stand objectively. All of this started with just a motion that, McCarthy got some votes around the House to make it a law, and McGahn was like, this isn't supposed to be. And so it comes down to making laws, it comes down to having the interests of the people at heart, it comes down to understanding that as far as democracy is concerned, anything is possible. And part of the conversations Nigerians are having on social media is that we are looking forward to seeing the 10th National Assembly, both the Senate and the House of Rep, being able to replicate scenarios like this where the executive arms of government are being held accountable and responsible. And then even within the ranks and files of the National Assembly, we also get to see that consistency. Remember, just after the elections, when the National Assembly members were sworn in, we had been told by the spread of the legislators across parties, the most mixed party system so far ever in the history of Nigeria, that we have senators, we have House of Rep members, cuts across not just what used to be obtained before now, the APC and the PDP. You now have the NNPP, you have the Labour Party, you have other political parties beside the PDP and the APC. So that makes it enough for people to, look into all of this consideration. But I think we just give audio to, what played out at the House before coming back to this conversation.
Gentleman from Florida seek recognition.
I extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House.
Does the gentleman first yield back his 1 minute speech?
I do.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida now seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House.
The gentleman will state the form of his resolution.
Declaring the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives to be vacant. Resolved that the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives is hereby declared to be vacant.
Under Rule 9, a resolution offered from the floor by a member other than the majority leader or the minority leader as a question of the privileges of the House has immediate precedence only at a time designated by the chair within 2 legislative days after the resolution is properly noticed. Pending that designation, the form of the resolution noticed by the gentleman from Florida will appear in the record at this point. The chair will not at this point determine whether the resolution constitutes a question of privilege. That determination will be made.
Well, it's a matter of developing democracies. Most people just want to see that things are moving as timely in the nation. It's the first in the United States. Very soon it will spiral to other nations of the world. As we can see, Africa is really evolving. I think it's the other day we're having a conversation whether there is a new order of leadership that is trying to rise out of Africa. We don't know if it's democracy that we want to subscribe to, or if it's meritocracy. So it's all kinds of things at the moment, but that's the first in the United States. But then again, you were trying to talk about the fact that Nigerians are still very unsatisfied with the fact that Labour had decided to forestall their strike for another 30 days, pending what the federal government is going to do as response to the meeting that they had on Monday. Well, at this point, at the end of the day, you can't necessarily say that Labour will satisfy everybody. Like I said yesterday, nobody really expects Labour to go against the federal government when a negotiation has come. Yes, the timing is awfully always wrong, but can we give the federal government a benefit of doubt? I think the biggest question with regards to that is, after 30 days, what's next?
Well, like I said yesterday, it goes down to implementation. Now, if you look at the items that have been enlisted in the MOU signed between the federal government, the NLC, and TUC, it's total 15 in numbers. cutting across different sectors of the Nigerian society. Now, how are we sure that the federal government will not go back on its promises? And the concerns and questions raised by Nigerians is, can we be guaranteed that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's led federal government will prioritize implementation of the different items that have been enlisted in the MOU? We have seen different MOUs signed between NLC, TUC, and the federal government in time past. Oftentimes, the conversations leading to the long days, weeks, months of strike goes back to the fact that, yes, we accepted dialogue on the part of labor. We understand the rule of social engagement. We understand the rule of always talking things out, being on the negotiation table, exhausting all possible avenues before taking the last resort of going for industrial action. But the federal government, on the other hand, will rarely show up for negotiations, and eventually when they do show up, because their hands are forced, and then get to sign an MOU or MOA, weeks down the line, the implementation is not coming forward. Months down the line, the implementation is not coming forward. So when the labor now sits, and then they've given extra time upon extra time upon extra time, and then the federal government has still yet not shown commitment to implementation of the agreements reached, and then labor takes to the strike, and then of course Nigerians say, oh, they were looking for their own. But if we have to be fair to labor, if we have to be fair for the NLC, the TUC, and all sectors of Nigerian economy, strike at this point does no one good, because even the people who are canvassing for labor to have gone on this strike are not possibly looking at what this might do. Okay, let's say labor goes on strike. The federal government continues the going back and forth. 2 weeks goes to 1 month, to 2 months, to 3 months, to 4 months, to 5 months. What will be the impact of that? Of course, we know the petroleum marketers, the oil and gas sector had declared support. Every sector of the Nigerian economy had declared support. So fuel tankers will not be moving, diesel tankers will not be moving, nothing will literally be working in Nigeria. So the same people who are complaining, that means if you're buying a cup of Gari at 150 naira now, you probably will buy it 500 naira in the next 1 month, because the Gari will not be coming down, or will not be going down to the different states, or the foodstuff. So you're talking about like 300 to 500 percent increment in the cost of living. How will this spell out, or what will this mean for the average Nigerian who is even striving at this point to survive? So yes, a lot of persons might be, disgruntled, might not, appreciate the fact that labor has decided to shelve its planned strike for 30 days. But if we look at the economic impact this would have had on Nigeria and on Nigerians, then a lot of persons will also appreciate labor. But however, what Nigerians are hoping and praying for, and the words of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu and his statement of being committed to changing the narrative of Nigerians, should be shown forth in the action plan, in the implementation of the MOU that has been signed between NLC, the federal government, and the TUC. Only then can we event what is going to happen. Because if that doesn't happen, in the event that 30 days is expired, like the NLC chairman did told us yesterday, and the different things that have been itemized is not taken care of, when labor moves, I don't think there's going to be a way coming back. So the federal government needs to prevent that action from actually taking place.
I think the ball is actually in the federal government's court at this time, because Joe Ajero had actually said, abating this strike for the next 30 days is just to give the federal government a window to be able to deliver on their own side of the agreement as they have signed. But I think part of the conversations that we are looking at, and just for clarification's sake, 35,000 naira is not a new minimum wage, it's a wage award just to help with the changing times. But then again, Joe Ajero is saying that as the board and a committee is going to be constituted to begin having talks and conversations ahead of 2024 for a new minimum wage, they're looking at upping the minimum wage between 100 or 200,000. So minimum wage is expected, hopefully, if negotiations pull through, to move from 30,000 naira all the way to 100,000 naira or 200,000 naira, depending on how these negotiations will be duly done. These are conversations that the NLC TUC have been putting forward since about March, April of this year. So let's see how that is going to be done and how this is going to help the working population in Nigeria. I think it was when the federal government was saying we want to give 8,000 naira to households. They were the ones explaining how 8,000 naira to each household is going to affect 2 million persons because of buying and selling that is going to happen out of
60 million.
over 60 million people out of buying and selling that will happen from 8,000. But imagine that minimum wage is actually increased to either 100 or 200,000 naira. Then we are going to see an overall impact to a little extent in the economy also. So these are things that we are expecting with regards to minimum wage by 2024. But for now, fingers crossed, at the end of October, let us see the 35,000 naira increment being put for workers across the country.
Well, it's not just about October. I think at some point we'll have to open the phone lines and allow Nigerians, because according to the NLC, we're supposed to see it actually happening from September.
Yeah.
So how many federal government servant, as a civil servant under the employ of the federal government, have you received your September salary? Have you seen the reflection of the 35,000 naira that has been agreed upon by the federal government with the NLC and TUC? If you have, we'd like to get to hear from you, so we get to monitor real time if the federal government is already committed to actually seeing that the terms of the MOU is being adhered to. Now, another aspect that we're also coming down to the negotiation of the 100 to 200,000 naira minimum wage. That is a conversation that is going to be a tough one. We must be realistic. As we sit, there are still states who are yet to pay the 30,000 naira, the paltry sum of 30,000 naira minimum wage. There are still states who are yet to pay. But within the states who are yet to pay, you still find politicians who are earning in millions.
I think states like that should actually be probed by the National Assembly, not just allowing it to slide. Let's find out why have these states not been able to pay the salaries. For how many years have they not done so since it was implemented? Because every state has an allocation, some others bigger than some, but then how much comes into your state. It's budgeting. You need to know. So if it's not been done in certain states, those states need to be probed. Let the treasury of the state be probed, and let's know why it's not been actualized. Because if 30,000 has not been done, like you're saying, it's not possible. It will be very hard to get 100,000 or 200,000 naira. But then the federal government still has a place, a part to play in all of that.
Well, the federal government has a part to play, but beyond the federal government, we also have to see a deliberate commitment on the part of the state government, starting from the governor. Because one of the biggest problems we've had in Nigeria has been the issue of domestication. The federal government will issue a law or get a law signed, and then of course the states are also expected to domesticate those laws and also make it a law. Take for instance the issue of child marriage, where you have disparities across different states for religious purposes or for religious concerns, traditional concerns, and all of those. So we need to get to that point in Nigeria where there is a piece of legislation that makes it mandatory for issues that are of bordering on the welfare of Nigerians collectively to not be left to wallow. There should be a stipulated time by constitutional provisions to which states are given the right to legislate or make a legislation to accommodate and deal with the issues that have been raised by the federal government, or domesticate the laws at the federal level, at the state level. And in the event that the state, for whatever reason, refuses to do that, there should be the instrumentality of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that makes it possible for the state to be overridden, and of course issue of enforcement being brought into the scenario. Until we get to that point, we just might not see a lot of things being done. Yes, while the states are giving the argument that we do not have enough money, allocation is not going to be able to sustain 30,000 naira minimum wage, these states still have politicians who are earning in their millions, politicians who are going about doing their normal duties, who are earning just like their other contemporaries outside the states they are from. So if you are earning just like your contemporaries outside the other state, why can't you also make provisions to ensure that the civil servants actually also earn like every other civil servant across the different states of the federation? So those conversations are very serious concerns that needs to be looked at, and Nigerians would expect that the 10th National Assembly, led by Senator Godswill Akpabio, the House of Reps by Abbas Tajuddin, will look into these critical areas, and will also go back to really taking time to review the laws that we have in this country. Probably look at the constitution again, look at the gray areas that has not been touched over time, and then retweak it to fit the 21st century concerns and needs of Nigerians. If we do that, then a whole lot of concerns, a whole lot of hindrances and encumbrances on the part of development across the state level, and of course, which contributes to the general development of Nigeria, will be removed. When we do that, then of course, Nigerians will always trace back to the people who were able to, legislate the piece of law that has brought about that transformation.
Well, we'll just move quickly to some of our flash news for this morning. There's a certain video that has been trending on social media by one Dr. Paul Ezike, who alleged that inmates in Ethiopia, Nigerian inmates in Kaliti prison in Ethiopia, are being maltreated, by the correctional facility authorities in that particular country. But we see the fact that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said that over 270 Nigerians are serving various prison terms in Ethiopia. Of course, the MFA also noted that most of them are serving time for drug-related offenses. And of course, we saw that Dr. Ezike was alleging that these persons, of course, one inmate was crying out in the Kaliti prison that they are being punished differently from other nationals for the same kind of crime that they committed. But 270 in Ethiopia alone is quite a big number. And when you stage it to the fact that it's mostly with regards to drug-related issues, and then we are wondering why are we leading in the negative things also in Africa. But the Ministry of Foreign Affairs considers Dr. Ezike's narration as actually exaggerated and blown out of proportion, especially because he was also trying to assert the fact that there seems to be some form of inaction on the part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with regards to the plight of Nigerians living in other countries, especially those that are being incarcerated, like in Ethiopia, for instance. But they're saying that over 270 Nigerians serving various prison terms in Ethiopia. But this is a serious case as it stands.
Well, the ministry have said they regularly visit these prisons, and of course, in Addis Ababa to be precise, of course, to ascertain the well-being of Nigerian inmates, and also to relate and maintain a cordial relationship with the different inmates and the Ethiopian authorities. But here is the conversation I like to take a different turn. Yes, we know that it is the duty of Nigerian embassies, it is the duty of the Nigerian government to look out for Nigerians wherever you are in the world. But let's look at this. 270 Nigerians. For what? Drug-related crimes. That alone paints a negative image. So, would we have had this crisis spiraling out, or would we have had Dr. Ejike, posting the videos or getting access to the videos and even posting it? Would we have these conversations going back and forth? No, we wouldn't. If Nigerians step outside the shores of the country and engage themselves in legitimate means of living. We know that situations are hard everywhere, and most times when people step outside the shores of Nigeria, they say they want to go for greener pastures. And then you ask, when you wake up, in the last span of 1 year, in Akwa Ibom, for instance, we've seen like 1 or 2 scenarios where people come from abroad, through a lavish party, lavish wedding, lavish everything, and the kinds of cars you see them drive, like you would walk in the next 100 years, you can afford it. And then you look at the age range of these persons, people within their 20s, 25, 30s, and then they're throwing this kind of wealth around. Questions are asked. The concerns are, they are doing legitimate business. But no sooner have they gone back, then you realize that they've been arrested and they're incarcerated for drug-related offenses. So it goes back to the kind of negative spirit, the kind of, hammering by all means, whether legitimate or illegitimate. And the growing concern, if we have to piggyback on, conversations that have happened on the demise of, Mohbad and all the circumstances surrounding it, I think it's about time Nigerians who step outside the shores of the country know that they're carrying the image. And once you mortgage your right by virtue of the crime you commit, yes, the Nigerian government will look out for you. But guess what? The Nigerian authorities, the representative of the Nigerian government, is not going to be in the prison cell with you. And whatever happens there is going to be your word, the inmates, and the authorities in that prison. So we cannot really hold the Nigerian government responsible for what happens, first and foremost. The individual who carried his own two hands to commit the crime that led him into the prison should first and foremost know that he is the one, or she is the one, that has dogged that situation out for his or herself. So we need to also move away from those kinds of conversations. If you're living outside the shores of Nigeria, please find legitimate means. It doesn't matter whether you're going to be a caregiver, you're going to swim, you're doing anything, as long as it is legitimate. Now let's have legitimate Nigerians' right being infringed upon outside the shores of Nigeria, and let's have the Nigerian government being lackadaisical about it or taking care of those concerns. Then we'll say, yes, we have a government that is failing us. But in this context, you're in a prison, and we cannot rule out the different nefarious activities that might be happening under the platform or within the hiding place of the prison walls.
Well, I think your point is really, really strong. But then again, I think the way, like Ezekiel, for instance, was trying to put it up, or the inmates that are crying out, is more like you're now sounding like the Ethiopian prisons authorities are punishing Nigerian nationals differently from they are punishing nationals from other countries for the same category of crimes committed. So that now looks like some national disparity between a Nigerian committed the crime and a national from another ABC country committed the crime, but the punishments are different. And maybe it just sounds more like, why should a Nigerian be punished different from nationals from other countries? But well, you are the ones who say that you are the giant of Africa, and I should believe that everyone expects better from Nigerians, because we often do better. So if you're just to piggyback on your line of thoughts, if you're being treated differently in the prison walls, you need to do better. But let's also make sure that these kinds of issues do not become national concerns, where it's more like, yes, of the truth, nationals from different countries are treated differently in the correctional facilities because of where they come from. That also will be going against some kind of regulations and bilateral relations. Let the punishments be flat out for every kind of crime that is committed, whilst everyone tries to represent their countries most effectively when they do. But let's move on from that particular story. We are still in the very first few months of a new saddle of leadership in Nigeria, new senators, of course, the leadership of the presidency and all. But we see that yesterday, being Tuesday, the Senate amended its rule to restrict first-time senators from vying for the position of the Senate president and deputy Senate president, as it were. Of course, this amendment of Section 3, Section 2, and subsection 1, 2, and 3 followed a motion moved by the Senate leader, Okoyemi Bamidele, titled Amendment of the Standing Orders of the Senate pursuant to Order 109 of the Senate Standing Orders 2022. Of course, in the contest leading to the emergence of Akpabio as the Senate President, former Zamfara State Governor Abdulaziz Yari, a first-time senator, threw in his weight to vie for the position. Of course, we also see that the Senate rule book states that nomination for presiding officers shall be in accordance with the ranking of senators. Of course, it states that in determining the ranking, the following order must apply: senators returning based on the number of times re-elected, senators who had been members of the House of Representatives, and senators elected as senators for the first time. However, Bamidele in his motion stated that the Senate standing rule was amended on Saturday, the 5th of August 2023, to create new committees and other sundry amendments. Of course, we are seeing the fact that first-time senators are barred from becoming Senate president. Now, this is more like we are reenacting the conversations that had gone on back and forth when the likes of Akpabio were going in for that particular seat. Now, it is becoming a law in the Senate.
Well, it's becoming a law. I know that if you recall some time back, I think in the early hours of 2023, I think January thereabout, we had conversations about, the political status, the political agenda that is being driven by the West and the North, that you find a particular lawmaker sitting in, going back for as many times as possible. So there are names in this National Assembly, there are names in the Senate, in some regions of this country that you hear, those persons have been there. Day in, day out, time in, season after season, elections after elections, they keep going back. They keep going back. And I guess then, I think it was Ambassador Samson who posited that most times, why we can't have some of our legislators from this side of the world have the kind of influence, that is expected to get to a point where leadership responsibilities are close to them, is because we agitate a lot for rotation. Whereas other region would allow one individual to sit enough to understand the workings of the National Assembly, enough to have the influence that is required to lobby or canvass for support, or have the desired influence to bring about, bring things down to his region, for instance. But in the wake house of that, we talked about when Akpabio was also canvassing to go back to the Senate, and those were some of the conversations that I covered. And if we have to piggyback on some of the comments that Akpabio made, look at Chris Ekpenyong, for instance. He went into the National Assembly, and until he left, there was nothing that was accredited to him. No motion, not to move, not to sponsor, not to support. Nothing was attributed to him. And then, of course, in as much as, Kwame has made a joke out of it, that it takes for you to have some level of influence for you to raise your hand during plenary, and your hand is being acknowledged for you to speak. So if we go through those kinds of conversations, now looking at what is playing out at the National Assembly, as far as governance is concerned, in fact, in any sector of Nigerian economy or outside Nigeria, hierarchy is very critical. How much years have you put? Are you a first timer? Have you been there before? Do you understand the working of this office, or the landscape, or the political terrain, or what it entails for you to do that job? Those questions are very critical questions that must be asked. And it was funny when the first time I threw himself into contest for the Senate presidency, and Nigerians were, Nigerians were a little bit, tensed up. You're having a first timer who has not, fully understand, the workings of the Senate, yet he wants to be in charge of the Senate. So the question is, you want to be in the Senate, there are persons who had been there long before you. How are you going to sit presiding over the affairs of those people who are your seniors by virtue of your being elected into that National Assembly? So these are conversations that Nigerians are, taking abreast to the fact that, okay, we are finally seeing the National Assembly moving up, to up its game to ensure that, okay, first time as a rule that at least take the first 4 years of your being elected into the National Assembly to understand, to, build bridges, build relationships, understand the working of the National Assembly before now vying for the leadership. When you do that, of course, within that 4 years that you have, it is expected that if you have the aspiration or ambition of, being the principal officer, such as the Senate president, you must have done your, homework, do due diligence to prepare yourself for it. And so when the opportunity does present itself, in the event that you're re-elected by your constituents to represent them, then you'll be able to, not just represent your constituent, but also handle the responsibilities that the generality of Nigerians will entrust to you. So it's a good move as far as Nigerians are concerned. It's a good move by the National Assembly to ensure that first timers at least spend the first 4 years of their tenure to look at how things are done and understudy the system. And then after, you can, bring about the wealth of your experience and aspirations and ambition. And in the event that the National Assembly members find you worthy, to preside over the affairs of the assembly, then you get it.
Well, let's see how this is going to run, in the House as it goes forward, and at least now new people who will be elected in subsequent elections will know that they have no business vying for this particular positions. And we also hope that those that have been re-elected over and over again also are, worthy enough to become leaders in these capacities, so that we are not running at a loss. But then a very quick one this morning, we see the fact that the Nigerian Air Force says its airstrikes have killed several terrorists on the fringes of Lake Chad in Borno State. This is great news. Yesterday we also reported the victory of the Nigerian Joint Task Force in the southeast of Nigeria, addressing the ESN and other pro-Biafran agitators in the southeast. Now we are also hearing that the Nigerian Air Force has handled certain issues on the Lake Chad fringes in Borno State. Of course, according to the Nigerian Air Force, Boko Haram and Islamic States of West Africa province destroyed their howdahs and destroyed their structures, a strategic logistic base in the region, in airstrikes on the fringes of Lake Chad. Of course, this information came out yesterday. Similar strikes were also undertaken at the Tumbun Shitu after structures believed to be terrorist hideouts were observed tucked under thick foliage. We see the Director of Public Relations and Information for the Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Edward Gabwet, say additionally 3 gun trucks with terrorists were sighted moving into the location. The need to strike the location thus became imperative. The aftermath of the airstrike revealed several terrorists were neutralized and the trucks destroyed. Gabwet said Tumbun Fulani and Tumbun Shitu were struck between September 27th and September 30th after confirmation of terrorist activities, which constituted threats to military formations and law-abiding Nigerians residing within the locations. This is great news. We are making progress, hiding out in terms of smoking out terrorists in their different hideout. Terrorists were observed loading jerry cans in this region with some 2-gun trucks concealed under the shrubs. So we are seeing that the Nigerian military, the Joint Task Force, they are really out for terrorists and the ISWAP in the country.
Well, this is the story Nigerians want to hear every day. This is the report Nigerians want to not just read about but also see happening across the region, particularly the region that is identified as the red zone or the hot area for insecurity and insecurity related activities. So ISWAP, Boko Haram, bandits, all of them put together, jointly being neutralized by the Nigerian Air Force, the Nigerian Army, the Armed Forces of Nigeria. Is a big commendation. Is kudos to the Armed Forces. It's a great job they are doing. We'll always say yes. When the Army is doing great, we appreciate them, we commend them. We know that they are the ones keeping us alive. They are the ones, making the supreme sacrifices, making the extra efforts to ensure that our territorial sovereignty, our security is being looked into. And without them, we know where Nigeria probably might be at this point in time, with all of the agitations and violence that is spreading or seems to be spreading like wildfire across the different states of the Federation. But of course, it's a good move, and this passes a whole lot of message to Nigerians. Nigerians would say, yes, we are hoping that this tempo is sustained. We saw it in the Southeast, now we're seeing it in the North. So let's get to have this tempo sustained and even improved upon, so that the terrorists will themselves know that the era of them walking free in Nigeria, the era of them perpetrating havoc, the era of them kidnapping, murdering, raping, and destroying lives and property is coming to an end. I said yesterday, when you strike as the Nigerian Army, as the Nigerian Armed Forces, the separatist movement, the terrorists, they know for a fact that the state has all it takes to wipe them out. But why are we not doing that? Whatever politics is being played, whatever games or gimmicks are being masterminded by some individuals, alleged by some quarters, is not relevant at this point. What is relevant is the result of the Nigerian Armed Forces. If the Nigerian Armed Forces are resolved enough in their commitment to put an end to all of the activities of insurgency in this country, we're going to have it done. It doesn't take a lot much. I mean, it's probably a matter of an operation theater that is created and completely, separated from others, because military experts or security experts will tell you, when it seems like there is an infiltrator, when it seems like there is a mule in the Nigerian Armed Forces, first and foremost, all you need to do is screen the mules out, or set up a formation that puts together the best of the best across board, and then with the best of the best, you ensure that that mole is not given the opportunity to even breed and access into the kind of information, because those information gets classified and you need some level of pass to access those information. When we get to that point, the Nigerian Armed Forces will be able to rid the country of these terrorist organizations and their activities. And guess what that would mean? Investors who are running out of Nigeria, investors who are afraid to come into Nigeria, will now decide to come into Nigeria. And let's hope the reforms by the Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration with the banking sector, the dollar and the naira disparity, and all of those other economic reforms come into play and actually creates that desired enabling business environment. So we can see that the economy is going to change, unemployment is going to be addressed, a whole lot of other issues that has led to the increase in crime rate and other things will be addressed. So we'll have a better society. And all of this works for the betterment of everybody. So politicians will not necessarily need to walk around in armored vehicles because they're afraid of being attacked or being kidnapped. Their families will not have to walk around in armored vehicles. I recall having a conversation with politicians sometime last week. And I was like, this is my own armored vehicle. And I only use it during election and when I feel like my life is threatened. But then, in as much as I'm using it, I know that my family is not safe. So while I am here safe, my family that are not with me, my mind is still not at rest. But I know that I can avoid that if the country gets to a point where everybody's need is being addressed. So I wouldn't be afraid that somebody somewhere wants to harm me or my family just to access what should have gotten to that person freely by virtue of the person being in Nigeria.
Well, these are strong questions because when it comes to insecurity and handling, ISWAP, Boko Haram, and the likes of people perpetrating this havoc in certain regions in the country, the question has always been with regards to the willpower of the governing powers in our nation to be able to give instruction for the Nigerian military, and all of the joint task force to move as they should. It's always been the biggest question. Our, security experts that we run to every other time, Dr. Getso would always say that the Nigerian military has adequate information as to where, the whereabouts and the hideouts of all of these perpetrators. It's just who is holding them back from moving. But we are, it seems like we're beginning to see a lot of move by the Nigerian military, the joint task force and the like. So let's hope that there is someone who suddenly has the willpower behind leadership that is making all of this happen. And let us see how the North can get back to rest, because when we are talking about insecurity, we see how it affects our agriculture, we see how it affects education, we see how it affects trade, interstate trade, and all of those kinds of things. So the overall result is very, very massive, and these kinds of results has been put forward by the Nigerian Air Force and other military apparatus in the country. Is highly commendable. Let's begin to hear more and more of this. But still talking about awareness of some of the things that our security features in Nigeria are doing just before we put these conversations to rest this morning. The Nigeria Police Force in the Federal Capital Territory have said that hospitals in the country do not need a police permit to attend to someone who's been brought into emergency. Over time in Nigeria, we know that this is street conversation, where, for instance, someone has been brought into the emergency unit in the country, maybe with gunshot wounds or any kinds of experiences, and instead of someone whose life is under threat to be attended to, we see doctors who have also pledged to put the lives of patients ahead of everything else, asking for police reports, and in the long run you find out that most of these persons die. But the Commissioner of Police, Federal Capital Territory Police Command, Haruna Gaba, has revealed that hospitals in the nation's capital city and across the 36 states of the Federation do not need police reports before attending to patients in emergency situations. Now, the CP made the development known on Tuesday while fielding questions from journalists over a recent incident involving one Miss Greatness Oluronfemi, a victim of one chance operators in Abuja, who, according to unconfirmed media reports, was abandoned by medical personnel at the Maitama District Hospital to die for lack of a police report. Of course, Gabra said the issue is not only about the Federal Capital Territory. Medical doctors and nurses are in a position to attend to patients in emergency situations. I mean, if you think at the end of the day that this person might be some form of security threat, we expect that hospitals at this time should be able to have security agencies on a speed dial whilst you are trying to treat and make sure that the person is stable. quickly alert the Nigerian police force. We saw someone here with a gunshot wound. Yes, we are attending to the person, but we need men of the Nigerian police force to come, and ascertain what exactly is going on here, because we've seen a lot of lives being lost in this kind of situation. Imagine for that, report now, of course, maybe unsubstantiated, but we will not say that we do not see these kinds of things happening. It might be an armed robbery case, someone is shot, and then the person dies when the person might have been treated. So this is a case that must really be attended to nationwide. Let us see how medical practitioners across the country, CMDs of hospitals, put their foot down, that everybody gets the treatment that they need. And of course, we are also seeing how the Nigerian police force is warning residents across the nation to be wary of the kind of vehicles they board, advising them to only board painted taxis from designated motor parks. But we see how things are in the country. This might not be enough to go around, especially in the light of things going on. We would just only say that we also need to check the things that are giving room for the increase in the spate of insecurity with regards to one chance operations in different parts of the country, and even armed robbery attacks.
Well, I think we'll always have to get to the point where all Nigerians understand their rights. All of this boils down to we as a people understanding that we have rights, and these rights are enshrined in the constitutions, and these rights are being provided for. And so when people infringe upon those rights, you have every right within the confines of the law to hold people accountable. I recall it was on this set we hosted the CP in Akwa Ibom State, the police spokesperson rather, SP Odiko McDon, when issues like this spread are happening in Akwa Ibom State, and he said categorically that as far as the Nigerian police is concerned, that circular, that letter has been, memos have been sent out to all the medical facilities across Nigeria. If somebody is brought in with a gunshot wound, first and foremost attend to the person. Because not all persons who are brought in with gunshot wounds are criminals who are running away from the police. This could be persons who have been caught by bullets of criminals. So your first point of call as a medical practitioner is to save the lives of that person. While you are attending to that person, the police contacts are all over the place. Put a call through, let the police know, oh, this person we are treating, or we have received XYZ person with gunshot wound in our facilities. We are currently treating the person. The police will get there and be involved in the case. If the person was a victim of a robbery attack, it will be resolved. If the person was a criminal, of course the police would step into the action and take the matters into their hands and begin the investigation and do what needs to be done. This has been something that is consistently happening across the streets of Nigeria, and it will continue happening until Nigerians decide to hold people accountable. Because if we don't get to a point where medical facilities, medical doctors, nurses are sued, licenses are being withdrawn, facilities are shut down because of negligence that has led to the loss of a Nigerian life, we will not get to see deliberate commitment and action on the part of Nigerians or medical professionals. I have said it severally. I have taken somebody during an accident scene to a hospital, and just because I didn't look like I have money, the medical facilities refused to attend to that person. Now it took me bringing out an ID card that pointed to the fact that I was in the media, that everybody now began to run around to salvage the life of that person. But let's say I didn't have an ID card that shows this person is in the media, and so whatever you're doing here is going to surface in the media. Will the hospital personnel have started running around to save the life of that poor old woman? No, that wouldn't have been the case. And that is the scenario playing out across Nigeria. So we need to get to a point where we normalize as Nigerians asking for our rights. And when those rights are infringed upon, please, the instrumentality of the law is there. The court is there. Suing institutions should become a new normal. Because if we don't do that, guess what we are? This is going to be a consistent reoccurrence, and you never can tell who's going to be the next victim. Yes, we don't pray to board one chance vehicle, we don't pray to be attacked by armed robbers, we don't pray to get into crisis situation that will result in us being carried to the hospital by emergency or under emergency situation. But it can happen to anybody. In as much as we don't pray for those things, it can happen to anybody, it can happen at any point in time. So what happens when it doesn't happen to you? You're like, okay, it's not me, it's not my family, so we can let it slide. But when it comes to your family, if you don't fight for the next person, there'll be nobody to fight for you.
I think it's important for us to note that every Nigerian life matters, especially in the hospital sector. Every Nigerian life matters, so let us treat that. And I think we are beginning to see a certain kind of decadence in the healthcare, where healthcare attendants do not really care. There was this sobriety that followed their work, but it's beginning to be really abysmal in these days. You see a nurse attending to a patient, and that tender care that follow the profession is not even there. There's all kinds of harsh treatments and all of that going on, and these are conversations that need to be parted in all of this. Please, the Nigeria Police Force has said no longer should hospitals take give the excuse of waiting for a police order to be able to treat patients. Please, first of all, save a life, and due justice will take its course. But that's where we're going to put the stories to rest now, where we head on to Mary Joseph, who's going to bring us tidbits of global news. When we return, there's so much more conversations that we are going to have on Rise and Shine, so do stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses taken into counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum, live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief this morning with the reports that the Senate on Tuesday warned President Bola Tinubu against illegal spending and advised him to seek a supplementary budget for its compressed natural gas initiative. The Senate, through its Committee on Gas led by Senator Jaburi Jarube, urged the executive arm government to expeditiously present a 2023 supplementary budget to the National Assembly to kickstart the compressed natural gas request. Now, the request came barely 48 hours after President Bola Tinubu announced measures to cushion the pains of fuel subsidy removal on Nigerians. The lawmaker insisted that the law was against extra budgetary spending. Away from that, no fewer than 23 oil blocks managed by both international and local oil companies, which are under crude oil production sharing contracts with the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, failed to produce crude oil or were inactive, the federal government has said. It disclosed this in the latest oil and gas industry report for 2021 released by the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, an agency of the federal government. Now, it stated that the blocks failed to produce crude in the last year on the review. Meanwhile, the Lagos State Police Command on Tuesday night announced that it had taken into custody controversial singer Azeez Fashola alias Naira Marley in connection with the controversial death of his former record label signee Ileri Oluwa Aloba alias Mohbad. The public relations officer of the Lagos State Police Command, Benjamin Hundeyin, said Aziz Fashola, aka Naira Marley, has been taken into custody for interrogations and other investigative activities. On the foreign scene, Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who rode the tiger of far-right U.S. politics led by former President Donald Trump to achieve his dream of becoming House Speaker early this year, has been ousted in U.S. history. Now, the 55th Speaker of the House of Representatives was booted out in a shock vote by his rebels in his own party, who have seated in the 9 months since McCarthy narrowly quelled their attempts to block him and managed to claim the most powerful job in Congress. Now, reports say, like many in Congress, he had berated Trump after the January 6, 2021 U.S. Capitol riot, but the ambitious lawmaker sensed the winds changing and quickly reversed himself, making a public trip down to Florida to make peace with Trump, thereby securing crucial support for his speakership ambitions. And finally, in sports, the invitation of Hataya Hotspur midfielder Fisayo Dele Bashiru to the national team ahead of the international friendly games against Saudi Arabia and Mozambique has been welcomed by some fans. The Nigerian Football Federation on Monday released a list of invited players submitted by Super Eagles head coach Jose Pesero, with the 22-year-old the only new face in the squad. We'll have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's about to rise on channel. We have Francis and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
State and government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigerian for SpectrumTv to recover 40 lapses in Sim County.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters counsel is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.